Okay, the broadcast is live.
All right, so.
I'm not seeing the PowerPoint yet, though, on my end.
On the stream?
Mm-mm.
See, that's.
I could see it there. Good morning, everyone. Hold, please. We're trying to get the PowerPoint up and running.
Hey, how are you?
Good. We're trying to get our PowerPoint up and running. Oh, boy.
That's you.
But you're grayed out, so I wonder if you're technically on the stream, because I don't see you. Maybe ungray you.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
And I can see both of us, but I can't see the screen yet. Okay. Do we need the application? But the StreamYard is the only application that shows up.
Oh, you know what? It's this one. Because StreamYard is the only application.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Hey,
That's cool.
Okay. Now I can see.
Now
you can see. So you just need to make that.
a PowerPoint.
There we go.
Can you see?
Hello.
This whole StreamYard thing is very new. Very new for us. And of course, it's been, hey, Tiana, how are you? It's just very different than, because you are streaming, but you can't see yourself.
So good morning, everyone. We are live and in person. We've got people in our classroom today, and we also have people on StreamYard. So thank you for coming. I'm Lisa Funk.
And I'm Martha Fuller. And if you see us looking out and back at the screen, it's just because we have people here in real life and not streaming. So we're not being rude. We're just trying to pay attention to the audience as well.
And I think for people online with StreamYard, you have the ability to comment or ask us questions, and we'll try and get to those along the way. So thanks for hanging in with us, and we hope this is a really informative podcast for you. Not podcast, presentation. I should say.
Do we know how to answer the questions? Do we know how to get to the questions?
I can see them.
Okay.
Actually, not open today.
So I'm literally driving blind. So the class today is on a listing presentation, and it's called Listing for Success. So we are going to touch on the entire process. Unfortunately, we don't have time to dive into things really deeply and go over them step by step, but at least we'll get an overview of what the entire listing process looks like. And we are assuming that you have never gone into this property that we're about to do a listing presentation on. You have a referral from a friend of a friend. It's a property that you have never seen, and you've never met this person, although you have a connection somewhere along the line with this seller.
So, in today's market, as crazy as it is, we can just usually walk in to a listing appointment and tell them, okay, we're going to list your house next week. This is what we're going to price it at. We're going to put a sign in the yard, and it's going to fly off the shelf. But it's not always going to be this way. We work in different markets, and obviously right now it's a seller's market. but Martha and I both feel it's really important to put on the dog and show for each and every listing, no matter the market conditions. And even if that person is coming to you as a referral, and you pretty much know you're going to get the listing, you should always take them through your whole listing process. So when friends or family members ask them about, well, what is your listing agent do for you, they can talk to them a little bit more about that process. So we start out the process with a sales book and a listing brochure. We usually go to Costco and we buy our listing books. They're like 3/4 inch binders. We buy 6 of them for like $8. We also have on our team, we have a Hello Neighbor Team folder that we can put the same material in. But we customize the cover for the buyer, and if at all possible, we put a picture of the upcoming listing. So you may be able to pull that off MLS, or maybe you can just drive by the property prior to listing it and snap that photo. It just feels cool and custom.
We also have a listing brochure. That is really tiny. That just talks about it's a very brief summary, and we call it our lead line. We want to make the listing as well, but it's pretty cumbersome, it's thick, and it's got a lot of information in it. So this is something that as we can kind of read through and get the highlight points as far as listing the property goes. On our particular brochure, we have our mission statement. You can do a little file if you're not on the team, just something about yourself if you wanted to address it that way. And then this just touches on the points of the listing as far as what the initial meeting looks like. Once we get the house on the market, what happens in the contract, and then of course after the sale closes. So it's just a pretty light step-by-step process for the seller so that they can see what to expect next, what the expectations are. I always go to a listing appointment assuming that person has never sold a home. Don't think just because you're selling a luxury home or an upper-end home or a large home that they've gone through the process before. A lot of times, if they have, it's been 25 to 30 years since they've sold a home, and as well, things have changed just a little bit in 30 years. So it's always good to give them probably too much information and be very detailed in what you are telling them for the listing presentation. So when you first get there, the thing I always try to keep reminding myself, I'm there for a couple of reasons, but this part of the presentation, I'm building rapport with them, I'm gaining their trust, and I am setting expectations for the seller. So when I get there, I don't want to just go in and say, all right, let's see the property, what you got? I want to spend a little bit of time to get to know them a little bit. Why are they thinking about selling? How long have they lived in the property? And just small talk, chit chat. So build some rapport, make them feel safe with you. You're about to list the most intimate, expensive thing they own, probably. So once you've done that, and you're done with your not brief introductions, then you want to go through the property. And I always ask, is it okay if I take notes and take pictures? Some people get kind of weird about the picture thing, so respect that. But I've never had anybody push back. And if you don't, you're going to get home, you're not going to remember if it had a fast screen, I promise. So you'll think, oh, I'll remember that. And there's a lot to remember, so it's better to take notes and take photographs as you go. And then, ask questions about any upgrades that they've done. Walk into the kitchen and you see that the kitchen's totally remodeled. Have a party about what a beautiful remodel is, and then ask questions like, when was it done? Do you happen to have a receipt or have an idea about what the cost was to get this remodel done? Because you're going to need that when you, and explain that to the seller. You're going to need that when you're trying to establish value with the appraiser. As always, what does so ask if the refrigerator is. Are you going to plan on taking the washer and dryer? Is there a soft water loop at home? Is there solar that you can't see? Anything that might stay or go, really clear it out up front. And then I always ask, is there anything in the property that's not obvious to me that you might want to take with you? And I always tell the story of Grandma Chandelier. So sold a house, Grandma Chandelier was in the entry, pretty much like every other chandelier we met. It was Grandma Chandelier. Grandma's. We got into escrow. They were getting ready to move, and I go to the house and the chandelier's on. I said, "Where's the chandelier?" They're like, "Oh, that's Grandma's. We're taking it with us." And I said, I didn't know that, and so we were able to negotiate with the new buyers to put a new chandelier up, and it all turned out fine, but it could have gotten really ugly. And the buyers very, very easily insisted on Grandma's chandelier, and then I would have had some really unhappy sellers, and probably a really unhappy grandma. We had to use a chandelier. So always ask if there's something that's not obvious to you that they want to take with them. Typically, anything that's attached, of course, like microwave and range, dishwasher, curtain rods, balances, TV mounts, but there's other things too that might be attached that they want to take with them, and it's always best to take those items down before you list the property. You can put in there that Grandma Chandelier doesn't convey, just to be crystal clear, and the highest and best practice is probably to have the property convey what it's going to when it's being shown. So ask them what they love about the home. What's your very favorite thing about this home? And what do you think the very best thing about this neighborhood is? So you can get an idea and you can help sell that when you write the MLS description. You want to know any clutter and maybe paint or carpet that's in disarray. It's not the time to bring it up. You want to get the listing and make sure that you're safe. But at some point, you want to be able to go back and say, I noticed that the carpet in the third bedroom has a big, huge stain in the carpet. How do you feel about getting that carpet cleaned or replaced even? It is also a good time to reiterate and ask why they're moving and what their time frame is. So you can kind of frame for them how long it takes to sell a home. A lot of people moving from other states, it takes much longer on the East Coast to sell a home and buy a home than it does here. People are always amazed you can do it in 30 days, sometimes even less. So ask them what their time frame is. This is also a great time for you to find out if they might need to buy another home. So it's always great to get in on the buy and or the sell and buy. So that's always a good point to bring up.
Can I go back to Grandma's chandelier?
Mm-hmm.
So if they refuse to take Grandma's chandelier down, they want it up until they close, you would want to put in the MLS comments that Grandma's chandelier does not convey.
And make sure that that is not any offer.
Exactly. If you do get an offer on the property later, you want to be sure that it says buyers aware that chandelier does not convey. And if it doesn't, you need to counter that. Because if it's not in writing, MLS, remember, is just advertisement. So what's on the contract is what's officially agreed to. So, 31-point marketing plan, you might say, oh my goodness. Well, do you know that this should be how many? 52. So we have, this is a process we've kind of whittled down over the years. And we are constantly refining it. One of our agents on our team helped us really lay out a brochure and get it in three categories that we're talking about today. So we really have it divided in getting the property ready to market, and then once it's under contract, and then what we do for our after the sale. So we're going to talk through these points, and we feel it's really important to talk through these points because this is what we're doing for them to market their home. I've actually gotten listings because I've gone into great detail about the marketing process. Sometimes people don't, and then a seller could think really by explaining the points of all the different things you're doing for them that really helps prove your value. So first of all, we're going to talk about getting the property ready to list. And first we're going to assess their needs and discuss. like Martha talked about, you're going to talk about the expectations that they have during the listing process. Have they ever listed a property before? Did they have any hot points with the other realtor? You might want to ask them that. What has your process been like before? If they had any issues, those are going to be things you're going to clearly want to avoid when you're listing their property. As Mark talked about, the moving and time frame, any future real estate plans. We've already talked about touring the property. And as we go through the process after, we take the listing, we actually will help a little bit of staging ideas. I think that's really important. So, we can talk about that later in the presentation. One thing that you want to do is have your client prepare a detailed list of the upgrades that they've done in the home. That's super important because that can be used as a attachment in MLS or a exhibit in property to show the upgrades. Sometimes, buyer walking into the home doesn't understand, how much they've spent on flooring or what their pool costs, things like that. So it's a way for them to dimensionalize. And it also helps you when it comes time to prepare an appraisal packet. It's always important to have a listing book at the property. And most of your title companies can help you do a listing book. We always take that information and beef it up a little bit. They'll have information like the CC&Rs, different stuff about HOA, but it's also important to, in the community amenities or how close it is to grocery stores or, restaurants, things like that. Anything you can do to beef up that property book. And that would be something you'd want to exhibit on a kitchen island with, over at WeServe, you can actually buy trays that it's like a stand-up tray that you can put your property brochures in and have people leave business cards. So you'd want to put that book by your brochures in the property. And, right now properties are selling so fast that you don't have to do that. But it's important to say that you're going to do that because, you never know. And it's definitely something that you're going to want to do. And that's something that you'll start with after you have all the photos done. Equally important is preparing a net sheet for the seller. So when you go to the listing, get ready and start talking about it, you can ask the seller, how much do you own on the property? And you can take your list price, and there are different title companies that have information about how to calculate out what the different costs are for selling a house. You're going to want to get the cost for title insurance, reporting, notary fees. You can walk through that and lay that all out. ARMLS has an app where you can actually do that too. But really important to talk about the net proceeds, and that's where you can address commission and things like that. So there's all of these, an estimate of what they're going to walk away with. It's based on the listing price that you're going to recommend.
And you'll want to do that after you have an accepted contract as well for your sellers. So because things can change in this particular market, we're selling for above asking, so their proceeds are going to be more. And in a normal world, it might be a little bit less, so then they'll have an idea, if they're going to pay for the HOA transfer fee, anything like that, that can show up on the net proceeds sheet. I just had an incident actually where my sellers owe back taxes, and so that's going to be taken out of their proceeds. So I was able to give them an updated proceeds sheet that was very accurate, or I called it a more accurate estimate, which is an oxymoron.
A more accurate estimate
of what the settlement payment is going to be. So this is just, at least this way they can see what it is, and then they'll know that you're giving them another one and several along the way. So there's always, but there can be ramifications with selling a property. So if there are, or you think there might be, you can help the sellers connect with a financial advisor or a CPA if they don't have one, so they can talk about how better to position themselves for any capital gains that they might be getting. We always research the MLS and the tax records. I can't stress that enough. A lot of agents don't go to the extent of looking at tax records, and a lot of times there's off-market sales that might be on the tax records that can help justify your price. So we go to those two sources and do a comparative analysis before we list the house. Also, it's a good idea to keep that search active through their listing so you can keep them abreast of what's going on in their neighborhood throughout the entire listing process while the home is on the market. Again, in this market, they're not really on the market long enough to even follow up with what else is sold or what else is not on the market. But once this wonderful wave passes and you get back into more of a normalized market, it's always a good idea to keep your sellers informed of what's happening in the neighborhood. We always tell them that we have both the inside and the outside professionally photographed. And if you've been looking at the MLS, I'm sure you've seen all sorts of pictures on there that are not professional. And for the money that we make, you can step up and get a professional photograph of their home. Your sellers at least deserve that.
You know, if you're with EXP, Rocket Lister does provide some discounts, and they do great work, and they do it pretty quickly. Within a day or two, they usually can get out to a property.
We create a single property website for each property, and we have flyers and of course the listing book displayed at the kitchen. And again, depending on the price point of the home, but it's always nice to have a colored brochure if you can of the property. People love their view in the home. They love to have takeaways. And I know this next one sounds really silly, but you will place a for sale sign on the property. A lot of times if you have someone that hasn't ever sold a home before or isn't familiar with the process in Arizona, they think a lot of those costs fall on them. The pictures fall on them. The for sale sign falls on them. They don't understand about the lockbox. So these are all points that you need to bring up to them so you can show them your value. You can feel assured that you're covering all the bases.
You actually may have sellers who don't want a for sale sign on the property. I've run across that, and so you know, when you're walking through that part of the presentation, you might want to ask them if they're okay with that.
As well as the lockbox. This is a great way to bring up, you know, what does it look like inside your property listed and showings. Typically they put on high-tech lockbox, it's small computer, it tracks everyone that is in and out of your property and leaves a trail of information for us so we know. And now no one can access that lockbox, it's not licensed and bonded. So they need to know. We think they know that, you know that, but they don't know that. So again, you're there to educate your seller. When you put the property on the MLS, explain to them that automatically indicates to about 100, probably well over 100 other stations like Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, and on and on. And that's how your property will get marketed out, not just in Arizona, but actually nationally as well. And working with the title company for them on their behalf, they do their title report so we can make sure that we're starting the process with a clean title. If there is any clouds on the title at all, that we can start working to get those cleared before the property closes. The showing time we have an automatic feedback system, which is great. When we actually wrote this program, the 31.1 plan showing time was just an infant. So now is a good time to explain how the showing time works and that you're automatically asked for feedback and that you share that feedback with them if they want to. And it is always a way to ask if they want the feedback or not, because sometimes sellers can get their feelings hurt
very easily. And you know, when I take a listing, I usually tell my sellers up front, I'm I'm going to give you all the feedback if you're okay with it, and I'm not going to filter it. And most people are like, okay, and then as you start to go through the process and they start to get the feedback, you realize that they may not want all that feedback. Yeah. So, but it's important to show them, you can really use that as a tool to help them understand, hey, what are people seeing when they see my property? Am I priced too high? Am I, do I have good curb appeal? Is the paint bad? Things like that. That's the type of feedback that they'll get. So you can just really use it as a tool to help your sellers understand that there may be things about their property that they didn't want to change, but they might have to change to sell it.
And even if you're telling them, you should probably paint, and they don't want to paint, they're going to think you don't know anything. But if they hear it from other consumers, then they open their mind up a little bit. So, also, you're going to market the home on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram. So what's the new one?
TikTok.
We haven't learned how to use TikTok yet, but we're going to.
Twitter?
We don't know how to Twitter either. But we know people that know how to do that, so they are listening for us. So in this age, it's really important to make sure that your seller knows that their home is going to be out there on social media platforms, because it's such a great way to get some exposure for the property. And then lastly, and again, Lisa and I were talking earlier, we don't even know if they're doing realtor tours right now. Does anybody realtor tours?
I haven't seen any realtor tours where people are meeting in person. I've seen them where companies are doing the tour, they're doing video walkthroughs at places.
Oh, all right. So when you're not in a global pandemic, there's realtor tours where you actually meet at a restaurant, 10 to 15 realtors, usually sponsored by a title company. And you caravan or you get on one of their buses and you go and you view the listings of the 15 agents that are there. They're not doing those right now. Even if they were doing them right now, by the time they organize the tour, half of what would be on the tour would be sold. Yeah. So I would imagine those.
Yeah, it's true.
And this isn't going to last. And it's a great thing to offer your seller if they want to do that. It's a great exposure.
Yeah, I had sellers that really don't want an open house. Like they don't want people walking through their house that aren't with a realtor, but they would like a realtor tour because, kind of like the whole thing with showing time feedback, a realtor tour will help a seller understand how realtors that have active listings in the neighborhood are seeing their property. And it's a great way to get feedback. All right, so on to point 18. Big right along. We knew this was the meat of the presentation. One thing that we had at Revelation, we still have at EXP, is we have the ability to promote their listing prior to going live. It's the Revelation exclusive, and I think it's called the EXP exclusive now. And we can also do coming soons in the MLS, which is another way to actually get the word out there before actually going live. One thing that we also do for our sellers on the Hello Neighbor team is we create just listed postcards. You can work with the title company to do those for you, and you typically would want to send to 1 to 200 of the neighbors area, because they might know someone that's moving, or also they may be thinking about listing. So it's a good marketing tool for you.
Moving down the street.
Yep. We talked about open houses. I know there's a lot of people that are still doing them. We have agents on our team that are getting a lot of traffic at open houses, but you ask your seller if they do with open houses, and you can do those yourself, or maybe someone on your team or someone with your brokerage can do them for you. It's really important to tell your clients, this is something we are going to talk about every week. We're going to evaluate and assess where you are. A lot of times when I'm taking a listing, I will set up an automatic notification. So anytime a listing that's around the same criteria within a square mile of that listing, anytime a new listing comes on, anytime there's a price reduction, anytime something closes, I'm constantly forwarding that information. And you might have a listing that's on the market and there's no other actives. And then like 1 week later, there could be another active, the same exact floor plan that's a lower price than yours. You're going to have to reassess where your client is compared to that new property. So it's a constant process. And that's kind of, talking about the new listings and things in the market. That's why you want to set up a search. So now we're getting to the point where we receive an offer. And a lot of times people get so excited about an offer. Okay, we have an offer, it's not just about the price of the offer, it's about the terms of the offer. How much earnest deposit are they putting down? What type of loan is it? How many days do they want for their inspection? There's a lot of parameters, different terms. How quickly can they close? We need to tell our sellers that not only will we get them an offer, we're going to be able to help them negotiate the very best terms and get educated at that process. We'll show, and when we do get an offer, we're going to make sure that the buyers are pre-qualified. We always take an extra step on our team when we get an offer on our listing before we actually set the offer. We're going to call the loan officer to make sure that the buyers are really solid and qualified and have the reserves to come up with a down payment. That's really important. So once we agree to all that stuff, we go under contract, and we're going to talk the entire process. So not, once you get your under contract, the real fun. Now we're going to have the home inspection. We're going to negotiate the BINSR. We're going to have the appraisal. We're going to track every bit of that process and keep our sellers very informed. One thing, that especially right now with the market being so hot, we were just talking to one of our title contacts. They're seeing the numbers of BINSR cancellations go up because buyers are getting so excited to buy a property. They're just kind of throwing out offers, and then all of a sudden they're like, whoa, what did we just do? So, the BINSR is a really hot part of the process. And we're going to, when we have a BINSR, we work with our sellers and really evaluate what is the buyer looking for compared to what most buyers are looking for, and help them respond to that BINSR in a way that hopefully won't scare the buyer, but also protects them from too many expenses. We're also going to stay during the process in touch with the buyer's lenders. So a lot of lenders will send you weekly LFU, so you know where we are in the process. That's the loan status update about a lot of lenders as well. So you really need to stay on top of the lender to make sure that you don't get to 3 days before closing and they haven't even done the appraisal. I mean, that's one of the most important parts of your job when you have a listing, is to stay on top of the lender.
We're going to coordinate the final walkthrough at the very end with the buyer and the buyer's agent. We want to make sure that if there's been any repairs, that we have all the receipts over to the buyers. We're going to schedule and join our sellers, not in a political pandemic. Things are so different right now. They're not even doing in-house signings, but once this passes, you'll schedule the signing appointment and go to the signing with your sellers. They will hopefully have a statement prior to the final paperwork, and you have a chance to read it over. I have been in cases where they've had to change it, so you're reviewing a company that's never ideal. But you're just there for moral support, and if your clients have a question, maybe you can help answer them. A lot of times, title companies are going to notaries now rather than the officer actually doing it. And the notary company understand a lot of the paperwork, and so it's a good idea for you to be there. And then lastly, arrange the transfer of the keys, the garage remotes, the mailbox keys, all the warranty information, and all that to home buyers as well. One thing I did want to go back and touch on, a lot of times if you have 45-day escrow, there'll be periods of time where there's nothing to report to your seller.
Yeah.
It's always still a good idea to call them and say, hey, Mr. Seller, I don't really have anything to report, but I just wanted to check in with you and see how things were going on your end. Is there anything that you need that I can help you with? So, and you might have to do that 2 or 3 weeks in a row, but you always want to try to call them before they call you.
Mhm.
So if you kind of train them that you make your calls on Friday or you make your calls on Tuesday, then they'll go, well, we can answer that on Tuesday when she calls us. So, but I would really encourage you to try to talk to them at least once a week through the entire escrow process.
And to that point, I know it's crazy to think about a market that's different than this market, but both Martha and I have had listings that have gone on for a year before selling. This is not a normal market. Normal markets are, it can take 6 months to sell a home. And the hardest conversations are those conversations when the home is on the market and no one is looking at it. But you have to call your sellers because we talked about it at the beginning of our class today. One of the things that you need to talk about with your clients up front is what are your expectations of me? What kind of experiences have you had with realtors in the past? Probably the number one thing that they're going to say about realtors that they didn't like is they didn't communicate. And even when there's nothing to communicate, even when there's nobody's looking at their property, you need to tell them what you're doing to sell that property for them every single week. And those aren't fun discussions.
No, they're not. But your seller deserves that honesty.
Yeah.
You don't have to sugarcoat it. You don't have to be nasty. You need to be fair and clear, as clear as kind. So after sale, you're going to follow up with them after the close of escrow just to make sure everything has gone accordingly and everything's been taken care of. And I always ask them, did you receive the level of service that I promised? Did I meet the expectations? Because I want to know. If I drop the ball, I want to know so when I go on that next listing appointment, I have that next sale, I can be that much better. We're going to enroll our client appreciation program. That's what we do on our team. So they'll start receiving pertinent real estate information on a monthly basis. We also try to touch base with them on their anniversary, talk about the appreciation that's happened in the home, see if they need settlement statement for their taxes, things like that. So you want to make sure that they know that you're not just going to drop off the keys, collect your check, and move on. But you're going to be, an involved person in their life moving forward. And then ask for a referral. So one thing, I backtrack a little bit. When the home is listed is a great, you think you're rocking it. And again, in this market, you don't really know how to rock it because they're playing on the market for 24 hours. But if you just think you're doing it and you've got a great rapport and you're doing it well, don't hesitate to ask for another referral during the sales process because that's when it's fresh in their mind. The service that you're giving them. So they're going to tell their friends about great service. So when you're in the middle of listing, if you're getting showings or you just did an open house, don't hesitate to say, if you know anybody that's looking to buy or sell a home, I could have worked with somebody you referred. It's been such a great experience working with you. What's your superpower?
What is your superpower? So, at your listing appointment, we feel like it's really important first to walk in and tour the property, and then we also will lay a marketing plan. But before we jump into, a lot of times that's what they're all about is how much is my home's worth? We need to talk to them about the marketing process, and then we also need to talk to them about why we're the right person to list that property. So if you've had testimonials from clients that you've worked with in the past, you can put them in your listing book. You also have the ability in Zillow, even if you're not a Premier agent, you can get Zillow reviews. That's a good place to kind of build a rapport. You can have a link to your Zillow reviews in your brochure. You should create a personal bio for yourself, and you can have that in your listing book. So just, for them to get to know you on a personal level as well, but what your credentials are and what your experience is. Sometimes as a new agent, you don't have a lot of experience, but that's why you want to, if you are on a team, you're going to want to talk about the team's experience. And you'd be surprised. There aren't very many listing appointments that you'll go to, and someone will say, well, how many listings have you done? Just act like you know what you're doing. So this process will take you through it, but don't feel paranoid that someone's going to ask you that, because most of the time they don't. But you need to have an answer in your back pocket if you haven't had a listing experience while your team is the right person to list with. And it's also a good idea to bring in your past sales materials. Here in the room, we actually have some of the past sales brochures that we put together, but that's, especially if you're taking a luxury listing, it's a good idea to show them the quality brochures that you provide and how you run the property. Those are your lead costs.
Thank you. So you might want to have a personal bio. In our listing brochure, we talk about the team. If you're on a team and you're new, especially, you should really, really play to the fact that you have an entire team behind you, that there's not just, you're not the only soldier, but there's a bunch of you, and that you all are actually going to work as hard as they can for this seller. So we just talk a little bit about our team, and then we list all of our team members as well, so they can see how many people are on our team. Lisa and I encourage our team to always take somebody with them on their listing appointments. Lisa and I oftentimes go together. It's always great to have a second set of eyes, but it also kind of assures that seller that you have some clout behind you, that if for some reason you're on vacation or some reason you're unable to service them at that time, you have all these people that can take care of their needs in your absence.
So now it's the moment they've been waiting for. They want to know what you think their house is worth. And we're not going to go into a lot of detail today about how to run a CMA. That's a different class. But before you get into this conversation, it's really important to ask them, well, what do you think their house is worth? Trust me, they have an idea. Whether it be through an estimate or whether it be through their neighbor down the street that just sold their house, they probably have an idea of that. And it's a good thing to ask that up front before you go into your detailed analysis. And it's also a really good idea to run the Zestimate for them before you walk into your appointment.
Because they will. They will always look at Zillow.
And if they think their house is worth more than what the Zestimate says, you need to talk to them about how the Zestimate is calculated. Remember, the Zestimate just basically takes a look at a given area and it just looks at dollars per square foot. It doesn't really zero in on the unique features of that property. So Zestimates are just a general guideline. Sometimes they're pretty close to being accurate, but other times they're way off.
And if you have a unique property, like on a golf course or on a lakefront, anything like that, it's not going to pull in the value of that uniqueness of the property. So it'll comp that house just like the one across the street that's not on the golf course.
Okay. So once you talk about those two things, you're going to want to present the CMA that you've done for the property. And based on what you've seen, as you've toured the property, you can help them recommend a starting listing price. Ideally, when we take a listing on our TV, it's great if you have the ability to run over and preview the property before you have this big listing appointment, because that helps you kind of zero in a bit more on the property value. And it also helps you build a rapport, because at that point you would have met with a client twice. A lot of times versus, before you go on your appointment, you should kind of come up with a listing price range. So you'll, kind of have that in your mind after you walk through the property based on what you've seen. This is what I think the property's worth. So recommend that starting listing price. I think it's absolutely imperative to actually pull up the properties on your computer that you're comparing it to and go one by one through those properties and look at the pictures on those properties with the sellers. So they can really, instead of just having an MLS printout and saying, well, this one closed for $450,000, when you're going through the pictures on those properties, the seller can really see how their property compares to the property that just sold. Another thing you can do, and I have a listing that's closing next week. There was a same type of scenario I talked about earlier. We established a list price. We went live, and then a property right around the corner came on $10,000 lower. So we actually, I took my clients through that property. If you have the ability to preview any listings that are active, that's a good idea if you can get your seller out to do that. But definitely pull up your laptop, go on your hotspot if you have to, if you can't get into their live, I do the work to take them through those photos. And establish the list price that day, or a pretty darn good estimate of what that's going to be. And if the seller has unrealistic expectations of what that list price is, you can build into your listing agreement price reductions. I always, it's very important for sellers. It's not in this market, but again, it's not always going to be this way. But it's the first 2 weeks that a property is on the market. That is when it's at its hottest. The first 30 days, if the property hasn't sold, the property's priced too high. Really, if you can get your sellers to take the price reduction after the first 2 weeks, that would be great. But definitely, if they haven't sold by the first 30 days, you'll want them to take a price reduction. And if possible, you can build that right into your contract, so everyone agrees to that up front.
And you would just write that on the
Additional terms
on the ER. So we think that everyone knows how to stage their home and get it ready to list, and that's not necessarily true. So this is some general guidelines that we put together on tips and tricks for a great showing. And this was born from, I had a listing a long time ago, and I walked up to the front door, and there was, those little wooden bears that say welcome. They have a little welcome sign. Well, on the back side of that welcome sign, it says go away. So I walked up, I'm not kidding. So the little bear was standing there with the sign that said go away. And I thought, oh, this isn't a good start. And I was trying to approach it like I'm going to buy the house. So anyway, I went in, and short story long, it was pretty much a disaster. So, and he didn't really want to listen to anything I had to say. So I put together this form, and it's actually been really useful over the years, just so you know what your expectations are. And if they don't do those things, you've at least done everything you can to try to get them to make the bed, right? So it's pretty general stuff. But curb appeal, you never get a second chance. Once they drive up, if it looks like outside, and they're going to drive away. Again, talking about this particular market, but in general. So you want to make sure that the lawn is mowed, that there's no garbage in the yard, that the weeds are pulled, that it's, it looks pleasing on the outside to whoever is driving up in front of it. The front door and the front porch, I always tell them, remove unnecessary items. He needs to park his bicycle in the garage while the house is being listed. So you want it to look like a model home when they walk into that front entryway. People want to be able to visualize themselves living there, not the people that are living there. The floor should be clean and the carpet vacuumed. If the carpet's dirty, encourage them to get the carpets cleaned. The kitchen, it's one of the most important rooms. The kitchen and the bathroom actually are probably the two most important rooms in a home when it's going to show. So you want everything off the counters. Since I've been interviewing those out, I know what we're using that. Walk into a model, it's like no one lives here. That's how I want this house. I know you have to live here. So if you have to leave the coffee pot on the counter, that's fine. But they're better not having left over for morning. It needs to be empty. So Cinderella got all and came down here in a gown and shoes that were rocking it for a reason. She only got one chance to make that entrance, and that's how this home needs to appear when those people walk in. So it's another analogy, but I'm out of it. But you want to keep everything off the counter. You want that kitchen to look nice and bright and open and spacious. And you have the toaster and the waffle iron and toaster oven and coffee pots. It's going to look cluttered. And you want to try to avoid that. The pillows. Fold any blankets. I always even encourage people to have blankets out. So if they have pillows on the couches, that's fine, but often and make sure that they covered. Clean the bathroom. Just do a once over, put the toilet seat down, make sure there's toilet paper on the toilet bowl, the mirrors are clean. Again, you want it to look like a model home. Make sure that all the lights are on during the showing, that the fans are running, especially in Arizona, and the window blinds are all open. Doesn't ever hurt to make some cookies and put some nice music on in the background as well. But this is just a start. And in the backyard, again, you want it to be cleared from clutter. Make sure the lawn is covered, the weeds are pulled. Even excessive bushes need to be pulled or trimmed back. Probably the best value a seller can do is to paint the interior of their home. That's going to get so much mileage from the prospective buyers and isn't super expensive. There's an old, the family pictures need to come down. I don't think every family picture needs to come down, but you don't need to have 65 pictures of Johnny on the wall. So again, less is best. Just pull stuff off and keep in mind what a modern home looks like when you go through it. They have personalized photos in modern homes, but they only have one or two. They don't have 60. So everything with discretion and everything needs to be very, very good. The goal is to sell your property as quickly and for as much as possible. And in order to do that, we need to ensure that we stand out among the competition. When people walk into the house, they want to feel an emotional connection, and they don't want to walk into a messy, cluttered room. It simply reminds them that they have work to do after they move in, and they want to move in ready. That's where the term came from. They don't want to do anything when they move in. So keep that in mind.
Just a couple more things on that. You may have sellers who are just, they're kind of at a loss at a next step. So it's really a good idea to just say, hey, you know what, if you need a house cleaner, I can have someone come in and do a real deep clean for you. If you need carpet cleaning, I have carpet referrals for you, window washing. Be the source of that kind of information for your sellers so they don't feel so overwhelmed. And if it's a vacant listing, a really high-end listing, you might want to consider maybe having some staging done or having some light staging yourself. But another, when Martha was talking, it just made me think of a listing I had that wasn't selling. And it was actually friends of my husband and I. So it was a little bit of a kind of a sticky situation. They wanted to put their home on the market. They took some generalized advice, but the home wasn't selling. I actually was able to get a staging company into the property, and there are some stagers that will walk into a property and help the seller work with the furniture that they have to exhibit the property in the best way. And sometimes when you're, especially when there's parents and kids and they're trying to have the property present nicely, some of those stagers to go into a property charge about $250, but literally we had this gal and she walked through the property with my sellers and told them exactly what they needed to do by room. And they did that, and a week later the property sold. So there's always resources out there if you're struggling. That might be something you want to discuss. Another thing too is I really don't want to have religious symbols in a house because or political. So that's
sex. This is all from experience. So.
But just trying to, because that may be a turnoff for someone else. We're U of A fans, and we walked into homes that have ASU stuff everywhere. Don't do that either, right?
No, because we walked into homes that have U of A stuff and just turned right back around and walked out. So,
yeah.
No, so you want to try to be, as a seller, you want your sellers to be as neutral as possible.
Right. So another thing that you should do at your listing appointment, so many things, right? You're going to want to discuss the bullet points of the listing paperwork itself. So you're going to have a copy of the ER or the EA if it's an exclusive agency. You'll have the seller agency form. You're going to have the HOA disclosure form with you, and also the seller property disclosure statement. So you're going to want to briefly touch on those things. I always have a copy of a printed out copy of blank copy of the homeowners association form and the seller property disclosure statement that is a lead behind, because those two documents, as a listing agent, those are not yours to fill out. Those are the sellers, and it's really important that the seller discloses accurately.
So this is our easy exit guarantee, and this is unique to our team. And if you want to do this, you can, but we found it to be very helpful. So we promise our sellers that they're going to hear from us on a weekly basis. And if they don't, and we're not living up to their expectations, they can fire us at any time. They can't fire us once we're in contract, and they need to give us an opportunity to correct if they're told about something. So it says in here, you need to give us an opportunity to correct what's wrong, and if we can't correct it, then we will let you out of the listing agreement, basically. Our philosophy is that I don't want to work for somebody that doesn't want me to work for them. I work really hard, but I just think that you're working with these people for a long time. So you want to make sure that the relationship stays as good as possible through that entire time. So we promise them that we're going to give them short feedback, marketing updates. We're going to talk about the possible price reductions, new strategies and gains if the property's not selling. So again, we tell them right up front, if for some reason you're not happy with our services, if we'd like to know and have an opportunity to correct that, and if we can't correct that, then you're not obligated to this listing. I have gone on listings where my sellers have had a hard time getting out of the previous listing because the listing agent was adamant about keeping the listing. And I get it when you money invested and time invested. I happen to do that as opposed to doing business. but not everybody does. So that is something that we offer that we found has been very helpful. Unfortunately, I don't think either of us have gotten fired during a list.
But we fired sellers, haven't we?
Are we?
Yes.
This is just a glossary of terms that we leave behind for the sellers, because a lot of times we throw around acronyms like they're nothing and they don't know what a Benzer is, or HUDs are, or AAR, and anything like that. So we did just leave behind for the sellers. So you've done all of this, and now you're ready for the big close. One thing Lisa and I always tell our agents is assume the sale. When you walk into that listing, walk in and have the conversation like it's already yours. Because the confidence that they see in you is going to portray how you're going to sell that property. So when you go into the listing, act like you already know it. At the very end, this is your curtain call, right? This is your free time to ask for the listing. And you can do that a number of different ways. We always make sure that we have an ER available in hard copy if we're there. They're willing to fill out the ER right then let's fill out the ER right then. I always try to get them to agree with the things that I said. How do you think that we're the right people to list this home?
Yeah.
How do you comfortable with you?
How do you think my marketing plan sounded? Would there be anything that you think about that?
Yeah, so try to get them to engage so they feel like they're part of the process. And then there's all sorts of ways to close them. You can just come out and say, I'd really like to list this home. Are you ready to move forward? You can say, I can have a photographer out here by Wednesday and we can get it on the market by Thursday or Friday. Are you ready to move forward? So whatever your line is, you want to practice that line in front of the mirror 1,000 times so you're comfortable. It might as well just be your last name. You say it.
Right. I mean, a lot of times you walk into a listing appointment, and if it's a referral, you're probably going to get a sale. But there are times, and it's not, well, in this market too. I mean, typically sellers are going to interview other agents. So that's why we think it's so important to, lay out the marketing plan that we put together, show them our work by doing that, because everyone's going to go into that level of detail. But we need to try and pin them down to sign the contract. And if they just say, boy, we need to think on it a day, there are some things that we can do right away. We can, we've done videos out driveways. You get out to the driveway and just a quick video of the seller and say, gosh, I'm just reading, the listing. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. I just really love the opportunity, and I promise I will work really hard for you. I'll be following up with you and text that to them. Because sometimes you get someone, especially out of your doing that commitment to you, but you're going to want to follow up and follow up the next day. I remember it's been years ago. I got listing up in Beaver Creek, and I just by sheer follow up, they were ready to kept following up, and they're just you were so persistent. I could tell how much you wanted them to stay. So try and close them, but you can't stay on top of it. And if you don't get the listing, if you aren't the one that is picked, always ask the seller, wait, could you give me the feedback as to why you did not choose me? So you know that for next time. It's tough. That's one of those things you really want the listing, but it's a point that you can learn from and change your approach the next time.
Yeah, because we're always learning. Every listing is different. You're always growing, and so there's always opportunities for that. So that's it. Is there any questions?
At what point during your listing do you bring up commissions, and what is that conversation?
When you're going through the ER, yeah. And there's lots of discussions around this, and it's a different market right now. You know, there's a lot of people that are taking listings for
Reduce.
5 apples versus 6 apples. 6 apples used to be pretty commonplace. But you need to let your seller know that the commissions that they pay you as the listing agent will be split between you and the buyer's agent. So, and you need to, prior to going to the appointment, it's a really good idea to look at the active listings in the neighborhood and see what the commission, the apple rate, I should say,
What the apple rate, the apples.
those listings are, because if a lot of those listings are getting 3 apples and your seller only wants to get 2 apples,
It could hurt.
it could hurt their sale. It's, you know, as realtors, we're not supposed to steer based on commission.
On apples.
But sometimes that does happen. So, you know, you're always finding someone who's going to want a reduction, and you're upfront, you know, by taking them through the marketing process. That's how I think we prove our value. You know, there's always someone that'll do it for less, but is that person going to do as good of a job as you are? And I think you know, it's all about rapport. It's about, you know, our marketing. It's about our market conditions. I mean, right now we're in a market where we probably are going to take action because we have to do it to get the listing. But I find when you get to that part of the contract, just lay it out as you want it, and sometimes people don't even flinch. So don't assume that you're going to have a big fight about the apples. Assume that you're going to get apples that you're worth, and then go from there.
And just go through it like the rest of the AR.
Yeah.
You know.
Don't get nervous
This
about it.
the agreement is for 6 months, blah, blah, blah. You know, this, my typical Apple fee is X, and of that X, the buying agent will get half of that. And then down here, you need to keep all the utilities and just keep moving on. So if they ask, then you can go back and address it. And hopefully everyone has their pocket speech on what their value is and what it looks like to take plums instead of apples, less apples. It's a great question, though. Thank you. Because we knew it was going to
Hot topic.
come up, especially right now, because it's becoming the norm, which is, it's just how it is. So. Anybody else? Come on. How about
So in the case where they say they're not ready to list, like your example, how frequently are you following up to give them?
Once a week.
So
Well, you can go on a listing appointment and have your seller say, I don't think my house is ready to sell yet.
Right.
And because sometimes they know that there's that they need to do. That's why it's important to come with vendors available for them. Hey, I can get someone out here to, we've got a company that can clean your carpets, clean your windows, clean your house. One company does it all. You just make things as easy as they can. I think, sometimes when sellers are looking to sell, they don't really know where to start. So a lot of times after we have our presentation and kind of come to an agreement, we'll walk the property with them and tell them room by room what they probably need to do in that room to make it look as good as possible and get it ready to sell. Sometimes that direction helps propel them to action.
And you might just say, it was a great question. The question was, how long should you, how often should you keep in touch with somebody that might not be ready to sell? And Lisa said about weekly.
Yeah.
And I've kept in touch with people for 2 years, and they're just in my database, and I treat them like they're a regular client. And then lo and behold, when we're ready to sell, that's the whole idea of building your database. So, but I think once a week is good.
And on that topic, it's if your sellers need to do work to get the house ready to sell, it's probably worth another visit over there before you actually go live on the market, because the more show ready the house can be, the quicker it's going to sell and for the highest price. So sometimes we'll find that, we'll be at the property 2 or 3 times before we actually flip the switch. It's pretty common.
Especially if there's a lot of work to do
Mhm.
on the property. So, anybody else? Melinda, you have a big one coming up.
Yeah.
Does this help, Melinda?
Yeah.
Good. Great.
When it comes to marketing, obviously it's standard for us to pay for photos and a lot of times offer light staging. Where do you draw that line as far as what you pay for to improve the looks of the property and what is the seller's responsibility?
Well, and that's a good question too, but it's always different. I mean, you'll have sellers that will give you pushback about getting the house cleaned, or I had one where like we couldn't get the lawn mowed, and so I just hired a landscaper and I mowed it myself. But I always view it as it falls on the seller, absolutely. But if they're not willing to take an active role in keeping the house market ready, then you can either let the grass grow and sell the property and spend $80 a week for a month, and make the property more marketable. And that's just, I think it depends on how active your sellers are willing to be.
Yeah.
The other thing is, you can, when you're talking about apples, you can say, that the apples are where they're at because I provide these services, especially I'll make sure the house is professionally clean, the lawn mowed, pool clean, because if you don't do those things, the house isn't going to sell, and then you're not going to make it. So, but those things typically fall on the seller.
We've had listings that have been vacant that are on like the higher end scale, and sometimes those types of properties require like real staging. And if it comes down to like a staging question, that would also be a seller assumed expense. And that would be, if you're going to take a listing like that, that would be something that you probably should get quotes for up front. There's a lot of staging companies when it comes to stuff like that. It's probably important to stage the kitchen and the dining area and the living room. A lot of times you'll find like companies will do light staging in the bathrooms and the bedrooms, but the main areas is that needs staging, and it's actually more affordable than you think. And a lot of times it can be done on, like a monthly basis where the seller will pay. And you'd have to have statistics in front of you that would make them want to do that. If that's something you're thinking about, in that price range, homes that are staged versus not staged, what the price comparison will be. Just doing a little more research, but that's it. It's usually a seller assumed expense.
There is the option too to virtually stage, and then that would follow. Because that would be part of the pictures. But that's an option that we've used a couple of times that I think has been really effective. As long as you put in the envelope, virtually staged. Because people get freaked out and they go there and have plugs in the home. Anybody else? Do we have any from Streamland?
Not today. No,
None?
no comments.
Yeah. One thing I learned something years and years ago. Somebody told me, my mentor, said, remember, you always buy a home and sell property. So you don't want to talk to somebody, people sell for different reasons. And home is such an intimate term. They're going through a life, whatever. It's just, it is a widget. And so it's a property. Yeah. When you're buying a home, when you buy it, you're buying a home. You're buying a property. So just keep that in mind. That's my tidbit. That's why I'm throwing it in my for today. So if anyone out in Streamland has any questions or wants a copy of the slideshow, or needs to reach out, there's Lisa and my contact information. So feel free to email us or text or call us at those numbers.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
I don't know if anyone was there, but.
Well, we're still-
Yay!
we're still-
The last time we were.
Did you end us?
Yeah, are we
Okay.
free
The
to
last
speak
time,
now?
the last time we were so excited, we're like, we did it. And Mark was like, I think we're on StreamYard still. And we were.
It's only our second time.
Yeah, we were flying by the seat of our pants today. We almost.
Well, we
Put that
can-
on our drive. Or
I
somewhere
can,
we can,
yeah, I will put it on the drive.
print. I see a couple things we should print. Take with them,
Yes.
take some prints.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's all on the Google
Oh,
Drive.
we gotta fix my last name.
I know, we had her name as Gomez.
I know, I was looking at
I did. It was
I didn't want to
this
say
morning.
it. I'm like, I was gonna say.
No, it was this morning. I was supposed to do it last night and the kids came over for dinner and then they stayed. And
And I'm like, Elise.
I don't know where I got that from.
Don't worry, I'm the person that will, no matter what, always say something about conviction or give something to tell you. I'm always.
No, that's good. I want to know because ironically, I even hate to tell you this, but I looked up Diana's again because I can't even remember who has 2 R's. Gutierrez
Oh,
or but it's 2 L's in Durrell and 2 R's in Gutierrez, right?
One L. Yeah, there's a L.
I know, but just 1 L?
Yeah.
How come Facebook has 2 L's?
Because it's like using my name.
Oh,
it's-
Okay.
I'm so confusing, sorry.
That's okay. This, you don't even know how many names I've had, honey, so don't even feel bad. I just want to get it right. Okay.
Weren't you actually at one point just gonna go by one name?
Uh-huh.
Cher or Madonna?
So 1 R, 1 L in Durrell and 2,
2 R's in Gutierrez.
okay.
And Dana had it too.
Jeez Louise.
You had to,
my name.
I think you had,
I really specific, Stephanie's name was larger. I really specific.
Well,
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, while we're jumping on, I just did notice that you called on 31 point and I saw 34.
It was 34.
Yeah,
But
we're-
so
we
the
didn't
reason
say
is
we were
the
like-
last 3 were not in marketing or it was all like things reached out to refer us and
yeah, they're not marketing.
Yeah.
They weren't marketing
Yeah.
things.
You know, I was just asking 30.
yeah, that is
Oh.
true. I noticed that too.
Yeah.
I was like,
Well,
Kaupie. Did you say I missed-
I have the correct slide. Do you want me to send it to you?
Well, no, you were
Because
supposed to send it to me
but
this
I sent
morning,
you the
and
wrong one.
I know, so I had to create it at 5 o'clock this morning without
I have
copy.
everybody's name.
Well, I do too now.
Darrell. It's 1 R. Darrell. 1
One
R.
L.
1 R.
Just too much.
That's why we call you.
Just put GPT on there and I'll be like, what is, do you have a team member who just had a baby or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, she's not on our team yet, but
Oh,
she was
she's,
down.
okay.
There-
She's a coming soon.
Yeah, yeah, actually, she's,
coming soon.
yeah. And we have another
That's funny.
agent starting, probably the week of 14th. Her name is Teresa Schuba. It's-
Who I
That'll
called Scoobia for 10 years.
You better just continue to call her that because that'll help you spell her name. Because that one is really. But Teresa worked with us at QVC. And she was, she is a private program. Not her last program. You've never heard of us talking about QVC? Oh.
you guys have kept on the down low for quite some
Well, we've been gone for,
Yeah, we've been in Zoom.
guess who I saw at the gym yesterday?
Ooh,
Just guess, come on. Who would I not want to see at the gym?
Jeff Sutherland.
Yes.
Did he have shout out?
No, because we all had masks on, so.
That's good.
I saw.
Who?
Sue.
Oh, you did?
I saw little bears and stuff.
No. We would love to run into Sue.
Just closed her 18th deal.
Are you kidding?
No.
Good for her.
And she's still doing full-time bears.
She is. Good for her.
Yeah.
Well, she probably didn't work there for a couple
Well,
months and everything shut down.
Yeah. She's a bartender
Yeah.
and she's been there for like 10 years. Yeah.
wants to go back part-time marketing just to get that business.
Well, and she paid to wrap her car, so she parks her car out in front of the bears every day and.
Wow.
And so that's what she's doing.
I've been seriously considering that for part-time to one of the bars I was at, just for that. Every day. That's the part that we want. Even contact anymore, other than kids and.
You should, I mean, it's a great way to get leads that work for Sue.
Yeah.
I mean, it made us want to go out of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, cause
No, well, then you get in there, you're working, you're like, never mind,
Yeah.
I don't.
No, I don't have any desire to go back into the food industry. I spent many years there.
She said hello.
okay.
No, I miss her too.
I extended that. We miss you, come back
Yeah.
anytime.
Were you just out there or did you go out there specifically to see her?
No, I was out in that area and decided to have lunch. And it was even next to them.
No.
I never turned down the bears.
I mean, I'd like